Mike Catherwood in the house.
Hey.
What's up, brother?
Nothing, man. Life is very good. Life is very good.
I think we met at Ellis Mania. Was it Ellis Mania 15?
Yeah. The most recent one in Vegas.
Okay. Yeah. That's right. Because there's been one or two.
There's been one. Well, kind of cheating. There was two, but they were in the same day at the same time.
Okay.
Jason just decided let's record them all. We're starting 19 now or something. Okay. But yeah, that was quite an event.
Yeah, that was a good one. We had I think you were poolside for podcasts and the live stuff going.
Oh yes. And it was the only weigh-in I've ever seen where both men were in Speedos, and I believe one was on psychedelic drugs.
No, I saved the psychedelics for the actual fight.
For the actual fight. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that was a microdose, to be clear. I wasn't going deep.
No, that's a good choice, because I've actually been punched in the face while on like a large dose of mushrooms. It's terrible. It's terrible.
You got to tell us the story now.
I just was at a like house party in Santa Barbara, and went up to party with my friends who were in college at UCSB, and like it was a really rowdy environment, especially in the late 90s. Santa Barbara was just crazy, and I was on mushrooms. I ate a bunch of mushrooms and standing there minding my own business at like a house party, and this giant fight breaks out, and I'm kind of watching, just observing on mushrooms. Everything's like, bleh. And this guy just cracks me in the side of the face.
Is there a soundtrack going in the background?
Yeah, there's just some nice like Grateful Dead just like oozing through my brain, and a guy just cracks me on the side of the face, and it was strange because I was incredibly from like a pain threshold, I was incredibly tolerant to it, but at the same time, like it ruined my whole life, like my whole mind frame. It was like, what are you doing, man? That's terrible. Why would you even do that? And everybody's just.
But you just ruined your life in the moment.
Yeah, like 20 minutes later. 20 minutes later, everything was fine.
That's funny. Yeah, I've been out to Santa Barbara before, and we got in a scrap. Yeah, and I was in college too. I was at Arizona State, but I was like, damn, they fucking get down here. All right,
it's a really it's a really strange thing. Like Chuck Liddell's from Santa Barbara. I mean, it's a really rough, kind of wild place, but at the same time, it's a bunch of like passive surf beach town retirees.
And there's
like
some
it's
hippies,
a weird combination of
it's like if Carmel got a little salty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. So did you grow up here in LA?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the east side Pasadena area.
Okay. What how was growing up?
I actually, my life was pretty awesome. I mean, I was actually writing a letter to my parents the other day, and I was commenting about how much I appreciate them and like the lifestyle they provided for me. And this is, I believe me, if you're listening, I'm not trying to sound woke or try to pander to like the politically correct world that we live in. But I feel so fortunate that I was not burdened by discrimination in any way, because my parents, everything was normal to me. We had gay family friends as far back as I can remember. I'm of mixed, ethnicities, and we had every single kind of color of the rainbow was part of my family and my friend network. And my high school, my school growing up, if you were like a blonde white guy, you were by far the minority, and there was, and my neighborhood had 20 languages on billboards and businesses and edifices in front and stuff. And, not to wax poetic about it, but my point being is that everything in the world was completely normal to me. So I just grew up organically without like any sense of stuff being awkward or weird. And I don't take that for granted, because I feel like different walks of life, it's like stinky cheese or exotic foods. Like if you grew up with it, it's not exotic or different.
What do you mean? It's part fucking of the deal. Kimchi.
But if the first time you have some type of really like offensive, abrasive cheese is, when you're 20, you're like, what the fuck is this? I'm used to Velveeta. It doesn't make any sense.
So did you, I mean, it must have been, I grew up in the Bay Area and obviously huge Asian culture there. And that includes India. India is a part of Asia.
Right.
My school was like 70% Asian, including India.
Yeah, mine
Indians.
too.
And,
mine too.
Yeah, so we had literally 30% white people there. I think we had like 3 or 4 black kids in the entire school. Now, I played with a bunch in football, but that was different because we had those from different schools and different areas. So I did have a good mix of different friends. But yeah, it's funny because like my brother-in-law is Thai. He's first generation American. His parents are from Thailand. And they have 3 boys, all similar to my son's age. Their oldest is turning 4 this month. And then they have 2 twins that are 2. And when they travel, because they're from the Bay also. So it's like this. It's not what am I looking for? It's not homogenized, you know, it isn't like the mixing bowl, it's a salad bowl, you know, everybody keeps their cultures. But when they leave that environment, even like just outside of Seattle, and the Pacific Northwest is great. I'm not trying to shit on any states here, but they get outside of Seattle and then they got all these looks from people. And like my brother-in-law could feel it, and he's never felt that in the Bay. And I was like, why? And he's like, because I'm fucking with a white girl. And I was like, oh shit. And the mixed babies. Like, where have you felt like culture shock leaving that environment growing up?
Well, I'm very ethnically vague. So I mean, I'm not, you know, no one would look at me and automatically guess Mexican. I mean, some people do, but and I have a white last name. So it's really weird because I get like almost an observer's view of things. I remember I was getting a haircut in the Central Coast up by San Luis Obispo area. Okay. And for those of you who are not familiar, that's rural California. It's agriculture town. You know, I was in a farm town, and I was getting my haircut in this little place called Templeton, California, and this lady who was cutting my hair, she's like 10 minutes in, and she's like, so where are you from? Where are you visiting from? I said, Los Angeles. She's like, yeah, you know, I visit LA every once in a while. It's really kind of nice, but fucking Mexicans, they're like rats. They're just infesting the place. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I get, it was very strange, you know, like, so I get like a bird's eye view of people and their discrimination about it, but like,
you just kept your eyes closed so she wouldn't see the brown.
So I never really went places where I felt, or I felt like out of place, or I felt people's eyeballs on me, because like I said, I mean, people could easily think I'm Italian or Greek or something, you know? But I do recall, it sticks in my mind like it was yesterday. I was probably like 6 or 7 years old, and we went to, my dad's from Oregon, originally, kind of a woodsy part of Oregon, and we went to a fast food restaurant, a drive-through.
Which one was it?
It was either,
all my family's from the Pacific North, from Oregon, so
it might have been Whataburger or
Burgerville.
Yeah,
Burgerville, USA. Yeah. Fuck yeah! I hope you're gonna say that.
We went to a drive-through, and the guy gets on the microphone and to take our order, and he goes, "Welcome to Burgerville. Can I have your order, please?" And I was like in the back seat, like, what the fuck? Because I didn't know that you could have fast food restaurants that weren't, welcome to McDonald's, can I take your order? Welcome to Jack in the Box, can I? That literally, I literally did not know that it existed without a Hispanic accent, you know? And as a little boy's brain, I was like, wait a second, what do you mean?
You're shocked.
There's a white person taking my order. So that was the first time like I realized, things are different in different places, you know? I had this really, really eye-opening experience about 5 years ago when I was hosting Loveline with Dr. Drew. It was a nationally syndicated show, so it was awesome because we'd take calls from everywhere. And this guy calls up, and he was from about an hour outside of Cleveland. I remember exactly the whole conversation. He's from Ohio, and he says, "Hey, Dr. Drew, Mike, I got a problem. I had an Asian girlfriend, and she went back to her country of origin, and I really loved her, and I really, you know, found her super attractive, and I just don't know what to do." I go, "You got to give me some more here, because what are you even asking?" He's like, "Where am I going to find another Asian girl?" I go, "Are you serious? Like, he's like, yeah, what am I going to do? That she was like a unicorn. What am I going to, I'm never going to, I go, dude, get a Southwest ticket to Los Angeles, go like 9 miles on the 10 East. Your head will blow off your fucking neck. You know what I mean? Or just flying to San Francisco, just get out and walk around. You will be amazed, you know? So it was like a very clear situation for me to get, you know, it hammers home the fact that life is way different in America in different spots, you know? And it's something that I think we fight against, which is actually wrong. I mean, we should embrace the fact that there's like 20 countries in this country, you know, and
it's really fucking cool.
Yeah. And the lifestyle is so wildly different. I know you live in Texas, and I have a love affair with the American South, in particular, the state of Texas. And I love how out of all states, Texas is the biggest. They embrace their unique characteristics the most, and almost give a FU to the rest of the country. It's like, no, we're Texas. We're the Republic of Texas, and you can fuck off if you don't like it, you know? And I love that, you know? I think more and more, especially in this day and age where everyone fights against lifestyle, like everything's so divisive. I'm a relatively conservative guy outside of like social issues. And, you know, I'm a conservative guy when it comes to economic issues and the military and things like that. But I embrace like wacky hippie California. Like this is where mostly it's a blue state and people are super duper hippie, and they have these kind of flighty ideas about things, and that's the state, and we should totally embrace that and not shy away from it and get in arguments with everybody because their lifestyle is different, you know?
Yeah. Plus there is a place for everyone, you know, like I went to Kentucky, and that was my first time in the South, and we were in the cuts. I think we were in Paducah, and I was with some Green Berets and different special ops guys, and they were going to put me through like combatives. I was putting them through combatives training as much as I could. Obviously, they already had a grip of it, and they were going to do some arms trainings with me, and it was really cool. But I got the warning, like, because some of them were from California too, and they're like, "Look, man, it ain't the same. Like, certain groups don't speak to one another." And I was like, "Fucking spell it out for me." And they're like, "All right, it's not like California. Black guys don't talk to white guys. White guys don't talk to black guys." And I was like, "Oh shit!" And I think I remember, like, it was in Georgia. Sports Center run that thing in 2013 where it was like the first high school prom where they actually wanted to dance together. And I was like, 2013, what the fuck?
Super
like
crazy.
It blew my mind, right? So we went to a gas station. I might have told this before. We went to a gas station and we're all fucking with each other. And there were 3 big ass black dudes sitting out front smoking cigarettes. And, you know, we walked by and I kind of gave him a head nod, and we went in and we got whatever, and there's Confederate flags everywhere. You know, we go in, we grab whatever waters, energy drinks, we come out. And one of the guys was like, "Hey man, y'all ain't from around here." I was like, "No, we're from Cali." He's like, "Oh shit, you from Cali?" And then all of them fucking opened up and started chatting with us because they realized we were from a spot that didn't contain every part of that culture. Right. And that was cool to see that kind of that gap bridged, you know, because like my whole life I've been surrounded by black coaches, black friends, you know, black teammates.
Right.
And like, it's just it is completely different.
And I do think the internet, everyone likes to bemoan how the internet is deteriorating society. And there's a lot of negative that comes with the internet and social media. But I do think that that's going to be one of the biggest keys to helping kind of make that go away, because you get access to all lifestyles now. You know, you're not beholden to 3 newspapers and 3 networks, and this is the programming you get. No, you go online and it's like, this is everyone, and you just kind of get exposed to it. So I think, you know, as years go on and we all lifestyles become a little bit more homogenized, I think that's gonna be a good thing, you know?
Yeah. Talk about getting into radio and really like what that meant for you growing up, because LA and New York are probably the biggest markets still to this day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I got a shit ton of questions that go with that. So I'll leave it there for you.
Getting into radio was more than just a career for me. It was life-saving, because I grew up, I was a loser. I was a good athlete for like my high school, but I never had it wasn't like I was going to go to play college and or even sniff the idea of making a career out of athletics. You know, I was a 3-sport athlete. I liked it. I loved it. I was passionate about it. And like I said, I was good. I was good at football. I was good at baseball, but I was never like the guy on any team. And I was a D student. I was a loser. I was a kind of a washout. And it wasn't just that I was that kind of student and I was that kind of athlete. It was that I had a mentality like I told myself that story. You're just one of those. There's kids that are going to go to college and there's kids that are going to get great jobs. You're the kid that sits in the back of the class and just keeps his mouth shut enough to get a C or a D and not get in anybody's way. And for me at age 17, if I envisioned getting a union construction gig or something, that was over the top dream come true type thing. Because I just figured I was going to be living in, like my friends' couches and stuff and just kind of a drifter. I was a bad alcoholic drug addict, and I recognized it early. And so I kind of just drifted through life until I had these visions of being a rock star. And the worst possible thing happened is that I got into a band with some level of success. So it gave me a ground to stand on and, kind of.
So you're in a band. What did you play?
I played bass and vocals.
Okay.
And I thought, and I was good at it. I could write songs and things, and I had ability to be on stage, and I embraced it and I liked it and things. So I kind of, in my young, immature, undeveloped mind, I was like telling myself this story. No, this is it. You can do drugs in this job and it's great. And I'm going to be Dave Grohl and life is great. But I adopted the lifestyle much more than I did the music. And living on the East Coast when I was 19, 20, and that's when things got really, really dark. And so I came back to Los Angeles kind of hat in hand to my parents and got into a recovery facility, a rehab center, got clean. And I just got a bunch of different straight jobs, like I was a janitor at a prosthetics lab. I was a overnight kind of watchman at a rehearsal studio. And then about 6 months in to living with my parents and getting kind of just really devoting myself to sobriety, I got a job at this rock radio station here in Los Angeles, very kind of famous place called KROQ, world famous KROQ. And I got a entry level job. I was like moving boxes and driving the jocks around to different appearances and stuff like that. And I started prank calling the morning show and making parody songs and just giving them to the morning show. And I remember twice I even stole a mic flag and went out with a microphone and did like on the street interviews and stuff, like totally out of totally inappropriate things that you would do at my level. But by a set of really strange circumstances, the morning show hired me after working there for about 8 months. And it was the first time in my life where I had something that I was good at and people were telling me I was good at it. It was the first time anyone had ever given me some type of support and acceptance in something. And it wasn't like being in a death metal band where I was good at something, but my parents were kind of like in denial. This was something that my dad could go to his country club buddies and be like, "Oh, my son's in radio and you can listen to him in the morning." And it was the very first time that mainstream society had accepted me for something. And it felt amazing. And I just, from that point on, was hyper focused and super driven. And so I worked for the morning show and had a lot of really great personal and professional success in doing that. And about 5-6 years into doing that, Adam Carolla had left Loveline, and they were looking for a host, and they were auditioning and trying out all these like really talented showbiz successful people, Joel McHale and Olivia Munn and all these people. And I went to the program director and I threw my hat in the ring. And I was like, look, I'm in recovery. Have had lots of terrible experiences in romantic relationships that I can draw from. I really feel like I'm good for this job. And so after about like 6 months of kind of filling in and trying it out, they hired me to host Loveline, and that's when kind of life started unfolding for me. And that's where I really started to get the sense of like, oh, you're a professional broadcaster and you're 29, 28 years old, and this is something you can do forever. You know, I'd finally found myself, and it was circling back to what I talked about earlier. It was life-saving. It was above and beyond just my career. It was something I could grasp onto and really say like, this is me, and it's something positive. It was something that I could grasp onto that wasn't drug addict, that wasn't loser, it was like, no, this is a positive thing that you can tell yourself you are, you know?
Hell yeah. How long did you do Loveline?
6 years.
Okay. When did you get into podcasting and you know, like that? I want to get into the difference here because, you know, Rogan often talks about how podcasting has changed. It's one of the many things, you know, you look at how our media has changed, and often when we're born into it. It's like, oh yeah, we get fucking iPhones and iPads. It's just the way that it is. But I'm sure you remember like corded phones and shit like that.
Absolutely.
When cell phones were first in there. So I like looking at through that lens at kind of the differences in how media has changed.
You're totally right. I remember in the beginning of podcasting, 2008, 2009, where it was like Kevin Smith and Tom Green, you know, like it was just like three dudes, you know, and Kevin Pollak. I remember it, but as a radio guy, I was like, well, that's silly.
Yeah.
That's something you do in your mom's basement. It's not a real gig. It's not real. And I'd been fortunate enough, probably 2 years into hosting Loveline, I started to get a lot more TV jobs. I started filling for Regis.
No shit.
With some frequency. Back when Regis still hosted Live with Regis and Kelly, you know, he was like 80. So he would have to take like weeks off pretty frequently. And what they would do is like stunt casting. They would do the men of Major League Baseball, the men of New York City Fire, the men of fill in the blank job. And one of the weeks they did was the men of radio, and they had a contest where the listeners of radio shows around the country would nominate prospective co-hosts. And like, so out of nowhere, people nominated me to do it. And
you're in a massive market and you're good.
Right. Well, but I'm in a massive market and I was good at it, but I was also like morning radio kind of silly shock jockey world, you know, like I made fart jokes for a living. And so like the idea that they would want me to come in and fill in for Regis was completely foreign. I thought like Kimmel and Kevin and Bean were pranking me. You know, I didn't think it was, but so I won this contest and I went in and I filled in for Regis, and television jobs just unfolded from that. So I started to really get business and do well in television too, and had a lot of like really mainstream jobs. I would do Access Hollywood, I would do E! News, and then like Live with Regis and Kelly, and these really commercial mainstream gigs. And I saw that in glaring contrast to radio, that was very structured, and there was a very narrow kind of margin of things you could say and could not say.
Yeah, you got to get hair and makeup done before there's a whole production. You have a fucking
11 producers.
You're in a box with the shit you can talk about,
and you are not free to be yourself. You are kind of guided into what you can say and the questions you can ask guests. It's very structured and very limited in a lot of ways. And so I didn't like that. Go fast forward to say 2012, 2013, and I started to recognize that radio was becoming that way. It started to get so limited, and you were very controlled in the things you could, which was so different than the radio I grew up in, even just 5 years prior to that, where it was like the Wild West. So I started to open my eyes to things like podcasts. Now, by this point, like I said, 2012, 2013, people are making a real living at podcasting. And it's not something that traditional broadcasters pointed their finger at and laughed at. It had become the place where people were doing really, really groundbreaking, effective broadcasting. Things like Rogan, obviously, Mark Maron. The list goes on and on.
Even like the big productions like NPR and some of these other, like they
were great.
They're rocking,
the Fresh
too.
Air, and there was radio theater productions, like these murder mysteries and podcast productions like that, and so this world kind of looking at radio as something that I didn't recognize anymore and wanted to kind of maybe open my eyes to other things. Podcasting really became this reality, and so did SiriusXM. SiriusXM started to, and at that time, that's when I had already become friendly personally with Jason Ellis, but that's when the notion of like maybe even professionally pursuing that, and doing something in SiriusXM and then the world of podcasting, that's when it became a reality, and so I started pursuing that.
Yeah, it seems like when SiriusXM came out and they were separate at first, then joined, right? That was like almost like the HBO to cable, right? Yeah. You could have like an HBO, you could see titties and there's no commercials, and rated R programming and above is fully acceptable. And then that's kind of what that brought to audio. And I remember that gathered a lot of people. I remember you rent a car, it's already got it installed, that kind of shit. And then podcasting was another layer to that. Right. Not as high production, you know, but not for a lot of people at least. But I remember going, when I went on Jason's show, I was like, holy shit. Like this, I've never been I guess I've been on a couple radio shows when I was fighting, but I wasn't paying attention to it as much. It was just like, oh yeah, whatever. They have all these gadgets and gizmos here. But like once I was in podcasting and I went on Jason's, I was like, good God, like this is a fucking big ass production. Like they have tables as big as this table that are just covered in ways to affect the audio. You know, it's pretty cool to see that.
But it's very cool to see that, and I appreciate the big, polished, over the top production of really good radio shows and podcasts. But something else I really appreciate is the punk rock kind of DIY ethic of the fact that you don't need all that to make a great podcast. You got a laptop and some microphones, dude. You can do your own show. Yeah, that's crazy, and I love that aspect of it. A lot of people, traditional broadcasters, they look down on that and they're like, "Fuck that! I had to work so hard to get to the point where I could make my own show." I don't like that kids can just do it like that. I disagree. I think it's amazing, and I love the fact that people, if you have a dream, you can have access to it. You want to communicate to the world, do it.
Yeah, I like that because it does give like an equal opportunity to everyone. I mean, I remember the first microphone I bought when I got into it was like a $150 Yeti that plugged right into the computer, and I could do Skype interviews and shit like that. And it wasn't a perfect microphone, but it wasn't bad. Yeah. It wouldn't have shitty audio. It was good.
I don't know if kids who grow up in this world can truly understand. They almost by their own fault, not by their own fault, take it for granted. But in the 90s, man, when my friends wanted to make a skate video, they had to rent equipment and understand learn about lighting and figure out different camera angles and really kind of invest their studying. It didn't have to be too polished, but they had to start understanding cinematography, and it was a production, and then you had to make it into a VHS and get distribution and stuff like that. Nowadays, it's like, get your phone out, watch your friend do a skate part, and put it up on YouTube. The end. It's really crazy, and like I said, I don't know if kids can. It's not even their own fault. They just kind of take that for granted to just know what it was like in the good old days. When I was a young guy.
Yeah, it's nice because everyone could throw their hat in, but also at the same time, like it's. I think it's daunting for some people. Like, oh, I'm starting a YouTube channel. Like, if you said that today, you'd be like, bro, YouTube is loaded. Yeah, and then you hear that with podcasting, and they're like, oh, what's it about? I was just talking about this with my podcast producer Ryan. It's not to say if you're starting a podcast now, it can't be done. I'm not trying to discourage people at all. I think it's great. And just like Rogan, like, fuck yeah, do it, because the cream rises to the top. And if you have a good product, you don't have to worry about shit. Like it's going to get there eventually. But at the same time, a lot of people are like, well, you know, if Rogan can do it, anyone can. Right. Or, you know, what's it about? Well, I'm just going to have conversations with people. And it's like, oh, you kind of got to have a little direction here, you know, something that differentiates you from other people, unless you're great at speaking and you have some level of expertise.
You can do the very broad cast if you're Rogan and you have 20 years of experience in show business and are an excellent stand-up comedian.
Excellent stand-up comedian, but has a wealth of knowledge in a shit ton of areas.
Yeah, and you have access to great guests, all of that. But if you're just a regular Joe, you better narrow cast. You better really fine tune what you want to talk about and hit a niche market, because not everybody has the ability to just throw out, you know, like, I'm just going to talk about what's interesting to me and people are going to listen, you know?
Yeah. I hear that a lot. So you were a regular on Ellis's show, and then now you guys have your own podcast, High and Dry.
High and Dry.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that started fairly recently, yeah?
It did, like maybe 3 months ago, you know? We had just... we'd always toyed with the idea of doing something together, just us two. But we were lifting weights at Gold's Gym in Venice Beach, and Jason's like, "Hey, let's do it. Let's do a show." And I was like, "Yeah, man, we really should." And I really like doing it because I like doing it, but I also like High and Dry because it exposes the side of Jason that we know that the rest of the world doesn't. It's like, he is a man who's covered head to toe in tattoos and does all these wild stunts, and transferred from being a world-class vert skater into MMA. So he's this super macho, incredibly daring kind of wild animal. But anyone who knows him for any level of time on a personal level, you know, like, Jason's a really sensitive guy, like a super sensitive guy that he has a very real, very, very likable soft side. And I wanted to push that with this podcast. It wasn't just going to be an extension of the Jason Ellis show with stunts and craziness. I wanted to really like talk about mental health and struggles and dealing with abuse and trauma, and show that like a guy like Jason, a super alpha male, oh yeah, you know, he does cry and he does worry about himself. And I like to look at it like the difference between the Jason Ellis show is hip hop. It's all about talking about his omnipotence and how awesome he is, and about how he's better than any other MC on the microphone. And High and Dry is like country music. It's all about exposing your vulnerability and talking about how like you're after your breakup, you got a bottle of whiskey in your pickup and you're crying about it. You know, that's the way I like to kind of make the analogy about the difference. You know,
I like that. What would you say are some of the guests that you have on?
We had a really great episode recently with Buck Angel, who's I don't know how to. He was born a woman. Okay, so I don't know. But he's now a man, but has a vagina. But he's a man. He's like a manly man. But he's an adult star. And talking to Buck about,
you said he's an adult star. So
So he's out there living his life in front of the camera as this trans male, and talking to him about identity, about embracing who you really are in a world that kind of pushes you to be something else, was really, really eye-opening for me. And I think really special for Jason, who has just recently been open about his bisexuality. And I always tell Jason, I was like, man, it's really important for you to be open about it, because nothing against these guys. It's very brave for Adam Lambert or Lance Bass to talk about being open about being gay. But we're like, we always kind of knew you were gay. Let's not. And you fit the stereotype of what a gay male is in America, the kind of the effeminate thing. You're into musical theater or whatever it may be. Jason so does not fit the idea of what homosexuality is in this country. And I was like, dude, for the kid who is into moto and into MMA, but is also gay and is listening, you mean so much to them compared to, you know, who's the figure skater Johnny Weir. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that guy can't relate to Johnny Weir because Johnny Weir's probably been the gay kid since he was in kindergarten. You are someone who's a breath of fresh air to so many people, and it's really it's so great to see Jason start to really embrace that. And so Buck was a great guest. We had Rude Jude also from Sirius XM, the All Out show, and we talked to these people who are by their own design living on the fringes of society, and it's been really interesting for me and like a gift to do that. And I think as the show starts to gain traction, we'll start to get more mainstream commercial people to come on the show, and the goal would be to get them to open up about their insecurities and their struggles with with dealing with just being human, all the stuff that we kind of deal with.
Yeah, I love that. And you've been talking about Jason and his hyper masculinity from the looks, from the outside. That's something that resonates with me because I know a lot of guys in MMA, like even Chuck Liddell, who we were talking about, like he's a fucking teddy bear. He's an absolute sweetheart. Yeah. And I see that with his kids, but even with his homies, when I was training with him out in Slow, it was just like, you're one of the most fucking genuine people I've ever met.
Right.
And no chip on your shoulder. You got nothing to prove. You're just a genuine dude. And that always resonated with me. But I'm sitting across from you. You got a hoodie on. I've watched you on the gram pull 500 pounds, which, as you mentioned, by powerlifting standards is a munch. It's still a fucking lot. So it's a heap. And you got into bodybuilding. I want you to talk about how your fitness has changed because you definitely walk the walk and look the part of somebody that takes care of themselves.
Oh, thank you, man.
And I think that also, as you've been painting Jason in that light, for you to come across as you are with your podcast, I think is incredibly valuable to people as well.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. Fitness has always been an integral part in kind of how I get by. It's therapeutic as much as it is, for my own physical benefit. But it's really changed for me since, my early, I started, it only makes sense, but I started really adopting fitness as a main part of my lifestyle when I got sober. When I was drinking and using every day, it wasn't exactly like I was going to be hitting the gym or worrying about what I was eating. When I got sober, I really put all my chips into training, and we were talking about it before we got on the air. I think I made a huge mistake into diving into bodybuilding out into sobriety as a way of getting healthy because it was not healthy. It was super not healthy. The dieting, the obsession aspect of it. And I'm not shitting on bodybuilding. I still hold tremendous admiration for people who are able to do it well because the level of discipline and self-control it takes to be good at bodybuilding is second to none. Honestly, it's like we all know professional NFL players, MMA fighters and stuff who are they work really hard, but they were born fucking awesome athletes. And they eat, Daniel Cormier still talks about, he's like, I had ice cream sandwiches on the way to AKA, and then I'm going to go fuck people up. What you have to sacrifice to do, to be at high level bodybuilding is second to none. But it's an unhealthy world. I got way into steroids. I got way into dieting. I got way into micromanaging every aspect of my life to fit bodybuilding as opposed to just enjoying myself. And now I've really gone away from it. Still matters to me. I want to look good when I take my shirt off at the beach. Don't get me wrong. I want my wife to be attracted to me, but that is way down the list of why I train and eat healthy. I use physical fitness as a way to kind of make myself a more complete person. I look at, the physical as just as important part to my health, overall health, as my emotional, my psychological, and my intellectual. And I feel like if one prong of that four-pronged kind of deal isn't healthy, it's like Christmas lights. It screws up the whole bit. So I now look at it as just a piece of who I am and stuff. And if I'm with my daughter and she wants to have hamburgers, I'll have hamburgers.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't, I don't register it the same way that I used to, where it's like, no, I can't. You know, you can have a hamburger, but I'm going to go take my Tupperware of broccoli and chicken, and that's what I'm going to have. You know,
we get a plain chicken patty with nothing on it.
Yeah. And again, like I said, if that's your life and that's what you love, go for it. And my hat's off to you. It's just not where I'm at anymore. You know?
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for bodybuilders. I kind of liken them to pro wrestlers in a way, and that's not because they have any similarities with the gimmick or what they're into in terms of how they display themselves publicly.
Right.
But if you watch The Wrestler with Darren Aronofsky, it's such a good movie.
Yeah.
And even if you just know wrestling, it takes its toll on the body.
Sure.
So like they're sacrificing themselves in a way, their physical bodies, to be a master of their trade. And I think in bodybuilding, there's a lot of similarities there. There's a degree of mastery that takes place at the highest level, but they are sacrificing their health to be the best at that thing. And it's cool to see that. It is cool. You know?
Yeah, oh no, diehard commitment to something is awesome.
Yeah.
In any world. But with bodybuilding, diehard commitment comes at a huge price. I like to play this game at I work out at Gold's Gym Venice, the mecca of bodybuilding. And there's pictures all over the wall of the champion bodybuilders for 50 years that have been training there. And I like to play the game of who's still alive. And you just go around, you point at those pictures like dead kidney failure, dead, cancer of the colon. And it's just like, he was 35 and he's dead, and so
I think they have a whole like death polls, kind of like in the movie Deadpool, like who's going to die first of like the top dudes in bodybuilding. And that's not to make light of it, but I certainly think it's getting healthier now, but for a while there, with the copious amounts of things taken and maybe not understanding the bigger picture of health, or even just looking at now, like there is a lot in self-quantification and even in Western medicine where if you know what to look for, you can see things coming ahead of time. So I think guys are doing a better job of kind of monitoring their own personal health as they go through that.
And a lot of people deserve credit for being the vanguard of the health movement in body. John Meadows and the Mountain Dog, Dorian Yates in his retirement. There's a lot of people who have started to really push the idea that no, you can aspire to be healthy and be a champion bodybuilder too.
Yeah, I love that. Dorian really showed a ton of balance. I'll link to his podcast with Rogan after this in the show notes, but like that just blew my mind. I was like, damn, this guy was one of the greatest of all time, and got into yoga and ayahuasca and DMT and cannabis, and he's still coaching people, still very much involved with bodybuilding. I think his wife or his partner is a really good female bodybuilder.
Competitor,
yeah. And like it's cool to see that he could still have one foot in it and then have one foot more in like a holistic approach to his health.
Right. And the two can coexist. They really can. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but the two can coexist. And another big turning point for me, because I still always had the insecurity about like, well, if my muscles go away, I'm somehow inadequate. I feel inadequate about it, but then I watched the Ronnie Coleman documentary, which is awesome. It's on Netflix. And if anybody, even if you're not into bodybuilding, I highly recommend you check it out. Ronnie Coleman, another guy who, without question, one of the greatest that's ever lived in the world of bodybuilding, cannot walk anymore.
Oh, fuck.
He literally has crutches and wheelchairs to get around. And the man's in his early 50s.
He was a cop in Arlington. I remember watching the old video of him. I think it was a workout video, so it had to be prior to this documentary being made. But it's the one where he's got like 200-pound dumbbells in each hand, and he's going lightweight, baby. Yeah. Everybody wanted to be a bodybuilder, but nobody wanted to know heavy weights.
I have a crazy Ronnie Coleman story. I was at Gold's Gym in Pasadena, and I was dumbbell chest pressing, and I had 110s, which is it's
good
respectable,
weight.
But it's
good
like
weight.
no one,
not a bodybuilder weight,
right. Guys at Westside Barbell are laughing at 100. But I had 110s, and I was working out with those and getting sets in, and Ronnie Coleman walks up, and he's like, "Can I get those?" And I was like, Absolutely. And to his credit, he was super kind. He's like, take your time. I'll wait. And I was like, okay, I only got 2 more sets. And he's like, okay, no problem. And I finished my set, and he's standing there with his like weight caddy, just waiting for me. And Ronnie Coleman, without really warming up or doing anything, picks them up and starts curling them. I'm like, oh, fuck. Holy shit.
Yeah, he's sitting there. He's like, I'm going to do some dumbbell kickbacks real quick. You don't mind if I use those paper weights?
Just totally fucking ruined me.
Man, I couldn't sniff. Like, I think I could hammer curl 50s at one point.
Right.
I'm pretty long and lean, but yeah, it's funny to see like the differences in that. You're just like, good God.
Right.
Especially among like, Coleman was a really strong bodybuilder.
He was the strongest.
And that was kind of the knock, I think, back in the day was like, you don't have to be super strong to be a bodybuilder if you're always just training hypertrophy. But you look at guys like Stan the Rhino Efferding, and Stan's got a great approach to diet. I think he does the vertical diet. And when I get Mark Bell back on the show, I'll have him unpack that a bit, and maybe I'll get with the Rhino at some point. But yeah, he always finishes a workout. He's in Las Vegas Athletic Club, and of course he's homies with them. So a lot of these Globo gyms, you can't deadlift and clang the weights, and he's allowed to do whatever the fuck he wants. So he'll take a hex bar and do farmer's walks with it to finish, like for like 100 yards with 600 pounds in his hand. And it's like, that's the fucking end of his workout,
right? That's the burnout.
Yeah. It's like let's just cap this off real quick. It's like, fuck, look at all those plates.
But there's somebody said about specialization, like you said, becoming a master of that. But to me, when I see like strongmen or like high level CrossFit competitors, that blows my mind even more, because they'll be deadlifting 650 and then run a 6-minute mile. And you're like, wow, okay, now we're talking about something really impressive. Because I know, I mean, working out at Venice Gold, I know tons of dudes that are jacked, but they walk like Quasimodo, and their body doesn't exactly move that well. When I see guys who are, they bench 3 plates for reps and then can go and pull off a yoga class, I'm like, wow, now we're talking about some really impressive stuff,
Yeah, they're finding balance there. Well, what do you guys, you were talking a bit about where you see the podcast going and kind of really taking these other high level people and opening them up. Mm-hmm. What else do you have going on in your life now? Are you still doing anything with TV?
No, I just did Access Hollywood earlier this week, and so I'm still holding on to this kind of mainstream commercial television. And as much as I like to bemoan how it's very restrictive and stuff, it is, but it's also amazing. I get a paycheck to be silly in the morning with Alyssa Milano, or, like I get to go do an interview with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, and people pay me for it. And I ask them a couple questions and things. So I'm not in any way complaining or thinking like that's something I have to shy away from. And in the same way that we were talking about like the CrossFit competitor or the guy or gal who can really find balance in fitness, I've started to really embrace and feel good about the fact that like, I can go on Ellis on a Friday and play Get the Cock Off My Chest, or see who's put an RC card tied up to my balls, and then in the same day go and do a family friendly interview with with
that's balance.
Candace Cameron Bure or something, like talk about her new Hallmark Channel show. I like the idea of being able to kind of be a jack of all trades when it comes to broadcasting like that.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece too for people, is that like if you don't have to give up the thing that pays well or gets your name out or any of these things, like if you have the thing that you love too, mm-hmm. going in tandem, right? Yeah. And oftentimes the thing that you love in tandem may not be something you get paid from, mm-hmm. But if you have, as long as you have both those things, it's very freeing for your creative expression and who you feel, and you don't necessarily then feel like you're a cog in the wheel, or that you have this muzzle on your mouth,
I remember so clearly, like 2011-ish, an interview with George Clooney, and he was talking about how he does the Ocean's movies so that he can make Good Night and Good Luck. Yeah, he has the major motion picture super studio movie and gets paid insane money, and he does that so that he's has the ground to stand on to do his passion projects. And I mean, not to even compare myself or put myself in the same sport as George Clooney, but that always rung true to me and made a lot of sense. And I'm developing TV shows. I have a animated show that got bought by Comedy Central and stuff that I've been working on with Ed Helms and I made, Fred Armisen and Danny Trejo and stuff and it's like, it blows my mind. It still seems so surreal that I get a chance to work with guys like that, but none of that happens unless I have a day job that I can like fall back on and feel comfortable about.
Yeah, I have a good friend of mine that I went to school with in college. He was he didn't attend ASU, but he became a firefighter for Phoenix when he was 19. And he's a captain now, and firefighter, paramedic, and captain, and really just an awesome guy. And his passion is fishing. So like for his bachelor party, we went up and fished in the Kenai River, getting salmon, and he's got his boat up there, and he rent out Airbnbs. Eventually, he wants to have his own cabin, but he's and he loves firefighting too. But it's a very hard fucking job.
Absolutely.
And not just physically hard, like very challenging to the mental, emotional, like in
the sleep patterns
and just, but one example he used, and this isn't to go super dark, but just to paint a picture of what they go through. Everybody understands cops see kind of some of the perils of society and what's going on, but firefighters definitely do. And he used the example of, the first time, because it's multiple times, but the first time you walk up to a kid floating in a pool and you have to communicate with the parents about that, like that imprints you in a way that nothing else can. Right. So that job comes with extreme challenges.
Yeah.
And he'll still go until he can retire. But then his main passion will be to fish and to host people out there and do fishing tours. And that's really cool to see that he can have those both at the same time,
right? And
have that sort of balance.
And that's a great part about the world we live in, especially for dudes. And not to get chauvinistic and everything, but there not too long ago, pretty recently, you went into the military or you got a job, you went to college or you didn't go to college, but you got your career or you went into the military and you did that, and then you retire and then you sit on the couch and that's what you do. That was the template for being a man in America, and now it's like, no, you can write poetry, you can start your own website, you can have a blog, you can the idea of what it means to be a complete person is like really broad nowadays, and that's a beautiful thing.
Hell yeah, brother. Yeah. Well, it's been fucking great having you on. Where can people find you online? And
at Mike Catherwood on both Twitter and Instagram, and then the High and Dry podcast. I really highly recommend it.
Fuck yeah, brother. It's been great having you.
It's been great to be here, man. Thank you.
Thank you.